I think we're just about ready to get started here. So we'll probably get a couple stragglers coming in, so just be ready for that. But I want to welcome you back to the Inside the Massive Team track. We're pretty lucky today. We got lots of great customers up on this panel, along with Julie Bort from Business Insider, who is the enterprise software dudette, I'm told, from Business Insider. So she has a ton of experience, and she's going to probe these guys with lots of good questions. The way we're going to run this is that we actually want you guys to participate quite a bit as well. So if you have questions throughout the session, throw up your hand. Either myself or Molly, who has the other mic over there, will find you and we'll get your question asked of the panelists here. So I'm not going to go through and introduce these guys. I'm going to do that themselves. Another mic. So I'll let you guys kick off. Dave, why don't you go first and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Dave Sokolowski, and I work at Symantec in the e-business group. E-business is responsible for the entire online experience from Symantec.com, Norton.com, through the online shopping by Norton.com, all the way through the shopping cart to the back-end payment processing. I manage a Jira and Confluence instance of about 2,000 users, which is responsible for running the overall e-business platform, and have been with the company for about 6.5 years and managing the Jira instance for about 3.
My name is Jihyun Lim. I'm working for LG. You can call me Jackie. And I'm working in the team of underneath CTO. There is Software Capability Development Center, because before LG, we are focused on the hardware, TV and smartphone and everything. But nowadays, they're like more focused on the software. So they want to boom up the software movement, so they make our organizations. Underneath that team, I was working with the infrastructure team. So we are controlled all the system, the LG, the developer engineers are using it. And I'm working with the Confluence and Jira, and has been 1.5 years, and about like 5,000 users for Confluence, and 4,500 people for the Jira users, and a little bit of a green hoppers. And the Fisheye we just adopted, and Bamboo and Stacy we're gonna plan to adopt at end of this year. So yeah, we did a lot of projects, and I hope that I can help you guys, or I can get information from you back and forth. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Randall Ward. I've been working with Atlassian products for over a decade, deploying them into enterprise companies and businesses like yours. That's where I got all my gray hair. I actually began my career with Jira back in late 2002, so I also have a lot of experience with Jira. I work for AppFire Technologies as their CEO, and we are one of Atlassian's partners, and we focus exclusively on the enterprise. So we have a lot of experience deploying the solution and the stack into large enterprise environments, LG Electronics being one of them. So interested to hear about your questions, how we can help you, and very excited to be on this panel. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Claudio Umbrella. I work for the company Autodesk. We are well known for our flagship product, AutoCAD, and have been working for 22 years. I'm based in our European headquarters in Switzerland, and my role is to be the senior technology architect for the engineering operations team, which is part of the global engineering. In our company, there is never a sunset, so that gives us some challenges on how we do certain things with our systems. And at the same time, we have a quite large number of people. We have 3,500 for Jira and Confluence we're using every day. So we have a large user base. Is almost half of the company using it.
Nice.
Okay, so I have a list of questions here, obviously, and I have talked to all of these folks about their use of the various products, and they have a bunch of amazing stories. So I really do want you to raise your hand, pick their brains. They have stories of pain and wonderment, and getting executives to sign on, and how you deal with getting all of this together with no professional sales team coming in, and the role of IT, and all of that kind of stuff. So if you have questions about any of those, or if you have stories to add, please raise your hand. We've got folks with mics that'll come let you participate. Anybody want to start out? Okay, I'm up. All right, Randall. So you're both an Atlassian user and you're a partner. And one of the things is that you've seen these products rolled out in really unusual ways. So you mentioned to me like marketing campaigns, patent tracking, litigation. So tell me a little bit about who came up with deciding to use Atlassian in these odd ways, and then how they sold their company on doing them.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, we think here in the room that these products just aid development teams and product development teams, but the truth is there's a lot of flexible product features here that can be used and leveraged towards other marketable goals. And so we're approached by organizations each year that have visions of deploying these tools for things that are non-software development related, non-product development related. And of course you have to balance those ideas against reality and really where the tool suite can fit, but we've been able to deploy them in pretty creative ways.
Can you be really specific? Can you
I'll be
tell
really specific.
one story?
Sure, I'll tell one quick story. So Caltech developed a giant laser beam. And this laser beam was to prove Einstein's theory of relativity. So about 4 years ago, Caltech approached us because they needed an asset tracking database. And they needed an asset tracking database to track millions of dollars worth of parts. They needed to be really defined their use of tracking those parts, where they were in their life cycle, who they ordered them from, who the manufacturer was from, whether they were deployed and maintained. And they needed a tracking system. And they went out and they looked for asset tracking and asset management systems. That's what anyone logical would do. And they found these systems that were multi-million-dollar, multi-year deployments, 30 Accenture consultants flying in. I hope Accenture's not here, and I hope I didn't offend you. But that's the reality of what it would take to deploy those systems. They needed something today. There were parts coming into these warehouses. So they had some creative people that went out and started searching for tracking systems, and then they found Jira amongst a list of tracking systems. And they looked at the feature set and contacted us, and we gathered their list of requirements and went through the must-have, should-have, would-have, could-have, and some of the features would work, some of them wouldn't. And now, 4 years later, they're using the system to track their assets. They've built the laser beams, they're live, they're looking for Einstein's theory, and hopefully someday they win the Nobel Prize.
So, theory of relativity, asset tracking, Nobel Prize. Anyone in here beat that? No? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, you can!
Thank you. In our company, we've made a quite similar experience using the flexibility of the Atlassian tools to adopt our business processes to be executed and processed within Jira, mostly within Jira. One thing that we experience with this is that custom fields, workflows are constantly expanding. They become more and more, which has to be handled. How do you handle that? Have you made the same experience?
That's why I have a job.
So can you give him some advice?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I work in a place, it's an e-commerce, e-business, it's going all the time. I know as a fact, they never said, oh, hey, with this new Jira tool, we got to make sure we have someone here all the time to make all these changes. Because our groups, our roles, our permissions, the workflows, everything is in a constant flux. And just by the way things happen, I ended up with a full-time job. At least when things are humming along, 50% of my time is just straight on user management and workflow tweaks. You can expand that to say, okay, let's roll out a new project. We have some changes to the way we want to run our business, whether that's a short change and we can do something in a couple weeks, or it's a 6-month-long project. But having someone on hand in the business, not in IT who owns the instance, but someone inside, an actual project administrator who you can stand over their desk and you can say, hey, we need these changes, how quickly can you turn them around? That's why I ended up with a job, and that was our solution to it. And it wasn't conscious either. It wasn't like, oh darn it, let's get a Jira admin in here to solve all our problems. It was just, that's what you're doing now, moving on.
I do have a question for you. How many administrators do you have in your Jira system? 3? Okay, it's manageable. Yeah. many times the problem you have just said, is exploding in workflow in number of custom fields is due because we start opening up the administration to half of the company. And not everyone is current on what the system already has. So the better you have control that exclusive access for the system administration, the better. Then, of course, you need to work in this team to make it happen.
Well, and actually, Claudio, you told a story about one of the troubles that you have is that your engineers always want the latest, greatest thing. And so you have to sort of manage expectations. And why don't you tell that story?
So basically, in Autodesk, we are an incubator company. We are a software engineering company, and everything is to create new stuff. Of course, there is always impatience. Everyone wants to do things for yesterday, which is good, push us forward to the limit. But at some time, trying to give immediate answer to anyone's need to configure Jira or Confluence, we opened for a while to a large number of people. We used to have 32 administrators in the system. And it wasn't that good idea because sometimes someone says, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to put a new plugin, and that plugin probably was buggy and put down the system. And half of the corporation is just not able to work. So we reduced that. We put just the minimum people to manage the system, and at the same time, we put a change control. So we never do anything without a change control. Everything is documented. Everything we change, we know at what time, which date, and what we did. Because if something it breaks after a change, we can go back and say, okay, what are the changes I applied? So that gave us a lot of stability in the system. And I encourage anyone here that needs to run a large Jira system where it never has to be down, because when Shanghai works, they go to home, Europe works, we go home in Europe, America comes online. I mean, there is no sunset. You can't afford to have large downtimes. You put a lot of teams off. So for us, it's very important to have control on what you do as a change to get the system stable also.
How many administrators do you have? 32
Can you repeat?
How many administrators did you downsize?
The
Three.
question,
One per geo.
the question was, how many administrators did you downsize to?
Yeah. 3, 1 per geo.
So you
No,
had-
1 per geography. 1 in Asia, 1 in Europe, 1 in the US.
So 3 people total throughout the entire. And how many users?
3,500.
So 3 people total for 3,000 users. There's a question back there.
Hi. We're actually in a unique situation, which may not be so unique for some others. Our company and another company are actually joining together. They're well established in Atlassian, and we're relatively new to it. And so we're trying to merge cultures through Atlassian, which has been a very interesting transition because we have folks that are well accustomed to other systems for ticket tracking. And so I'd love to hear stories on how, if you have any experience with that, how that's been managed.
Maybe I can answer that. Because the LG company has a hardware company before, and then they decided to change it to software. And there are just so many departments. They got mobiles and TV, home entertainment, and cell phones. Oh, the cell phone is mobile. And then refrigerator, so many departments. And they're using in-house systems, all different. And then for upper management people, they could not see the whole picture in one place. Everybody is playing different playgrounds. So they decide to put them together and then use Confluence to playing ground to every software coming in. They develop the software and they share their trials and errors and everything. So for us, it was very difficult because the Korean people are really stubborn to changing something. So we asked our upper management to help. So we get the consensus because they kind of understand one playground, they agree with it. So after we got the consistent for upper management, they kind of up and down to send a message that we need a place to survive in the smartphone or TV market. So after that, there is 3 to 5 people, so-called consultants, every into the different departments, every into different team to consulting their environments, consulting their situation, to do making templates for example, team operation, model development or the software requirements and sort of things. We make the template and we spread it out. And the one thing is very important is you have to get the consistent agreements with upper management. And after that, they start using it. And then they got all the information about try and error in different platforms they built. And they got the search engine to find out the information and they spread out. And after that, we decided we're gonna pick the power user to using Confluence very good. And we send it out the department's head that you have this kind of a human resource underneath you. It's really, really precious. Don't let him go, don't let her go. And then they got the incentive. And then people started using it. And without that system, they cannot work. So of course, we have tons of users registered in it. 5,000, they are every single day, they are log into it. And before they go to home, they log out. That's a lot of people using it. So you have to, work with the upper management first and then go into the field to work with them together. So that's the best way.
A template, just to summarize that, it's a template. It's training your executives.
Training.
And it's matching your executives up with a power user, right?
Yeah.
I have a different strategy as well.
Okay.
So I have a second alternative strategy because we've deployed that way and that works successfully. But sometimes it depends on the organization that you're acquiring or that you've been acquired into. Sometimes there's a lot of creativity on both sides. And one of the best ways to consider merging those instances and merging those teams together to one platform is to first allow some of the built-in functionality of the two tools to lend itself towards that merge. So we like to link the Atlassian applications together using native application linking so that teams, naturally as humans, we're curious, and so that teams can start to see the activity streams of other teams. And that naturally brings through and starts to fuse the organization together without it even physically happening. There's this mental sort of approach towards it. And after that, we start to bring together teams. We build communities across those teams. We have town hall meetings, and then we bring on board the executives. So if you're in a creative organization or a creative situation, or a situation where you don't think you have executive buy-in yet, you might want to try that other approach. And again, the features are right there. You can enable them immediately.
Yeah, and Jackie, actually, you had said something to me that was pretty interesting about executive buy-in. I'm hearing, you guys hearing buzzing? Yeah? You said something to me really interesting about executive buy-in. There was a whole list of ways that you convinced your executives to that this was a great tool. There were things that just made their eyes light up. Can you talk a little bit about those things? They like traceability.
Traceability. Okay, so we kind of searched between the IBM Zaz and this was Confluence, and then we kind of BMT, the benchmarking test, and we decided we're going to go with Confluence. And we found out there is a lot of brother and sister with the Confluence, the Zira and the Crucibles and the Fisheye and other systems. They're all together because they are in same company products is to merge together. So that was one of the big advantages we decided we're going to do Confluence. So for example, for Confluence, we could do the requirements. For Jira purpose, we could do for the each tracking and the green hoppers resource management, and then Fisheye that we could browse the source of code source, and the Crucible we could do code review. So we kind of asked them we could do all thing, and between that we can link together. So we could get traceability because before that we couldn't get any traceability. So QA does not know the requirement change, and that change leads to test case change. But they don't know because they test with the wrong and old test cases, which is what a waste of time. But with these products, we could not do that anymore. So that was one of the major points we convinced our upper management. So, yeah.
Anyone else struggling with? Oh, no. We have a question over there. Yeah. Talk.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'll repeat it if that doesn't.
It's a really long question. Thank you. Hi, sorry about that. I rolled in today because there's actually a standardization debate going on in my company right now about how we're going to implement Jira. And so the idea is we already committed to using Jira and Confluence, and but the issue is that the debate going on is that okay, there's lots of localized implementations for a handful of projects that are going around. So, wouldn't it be great if there was sort of one standard model for a project, and a standard workflow, a standard set of issue types, and things like that? And I get the attractiveness in terms of predictability and reporting, but it also smells a little contradictory to the spirit of the tool as far as customization and configuration. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I can take that. You want? Claudio?
So when you talk about standardization, many people, what they try to do is to dump one product to adopt another one. Let's put it in this way. Even a broken clock is right twice a day, okay? That means that no product is perfect, and you need always to foster a true discussion in your team to get and choose the right one. Now, Jira can help you tremendously because it can adapt the software to your process. And I always encourage any team when they say, why should I use Jira? I said, well, first of all, try to understand the product. Right now, I have a couple of teams that are evaluating Jira to move from different defect tracking systems to merge to us. So they have questions. We provide the answers. Sometimes we need to do some customization for them. Sometimes we need to say, well, it's not available. Let's talk to Atlassian, see if they have something in the roadmap. But standardization is not enforcement, in my opinion. I never saw in 22 years in Autodesk implementation by enforcement. I saw implementation by conviction. So you need to really show people that you have value by using one product and not another one.
So you can't make decisions. You can't make decisions for them. It has to. But it is a really hard question. So how do you balance? You're dying. Yeah, we'll let you. So how do you balance, customization with standardization?
Yeah, it's a classic problem. So we face this every day, and it's tough. You need the standards to be there because that allows a frictionless adoption process. So it's hard to walk into a new system if you don't have a guideline or a template. And what most likely we're going to do is copy the first thing we see. And we may be copying something that's a broken pattern. So when we roll these tools out to the enterprise, we always want to have a base level of standards in place. We want to have a base project configuration so that teams can select from that. Now, if they want to freewheel, they can freewheel, but we'll give them guidelines on how they freewheel. And if we feel that that's restricting them too much and it's holding down the creativity and it's blocking R&D functionality or R&D mindset, then we can spin up another instance and we can have a freewheel instance altogether. And those are the standards that we put in place in the enterprise, and those work well. So you can absolutely have that.
And who and how gets to choose that baseline of standardization?
Yeah, so another great question. So who chooses the standards? So there are a lot of standards that have been documented by Atlassian and by other partners out in the ecosystem that you can find. So you can start with a set of standards as a proposal. But what you want to do is you want to bring together the stakeholders of that system, the users, the groups who are going to have projects in that system initially, and you want to tell them, this is where we have a starting point. I want your feedback on the starting point. Let's put these in place. Let's meet frequently on them to see how we can move them and we can amend them, extend them in the future. So that's usually the way that we deploy in the enterprise.
So we have pretty much all of the Atlassian tools, and like a lot of software development companies, we run a lot of different Scrum teams. Some are Kanban, but the one piece that seems missing, because we don't have a lot of automated testing, it's still a lot of manual. I just wanted to find out from the panel, what do you guys use for your test case management? I've looked at some of the vendors here because we're looking to, that's the one missing piece, and we don't have a lot of web testing, which a lot of the Atlassian offerings kind of lend themselves to. So ours are more manual, kind of client-based. So I just wanted to find out what kind of testing you do and what kind of tools, whether they're standalone or plugins or what.
Yeah.
We're in an interesting spot. I actually just spoke with our new QA director last week. Symantec's in the middle of a massive reorganization, and so I don't have an answer for you except to say that we sat down, and he came from Microsoft and some other places, and he wants to use Jira for test cases. So I have not done that yet, but I think that's what we're going to do. So I'll come back next year and tell you. It's not any help right now.
Let me ask if there's anyone in the audience. Is there anyone in the audience that has advice? Here we go.
Is this thing on? Yeah, okay. We started switching to Atlassian tools back in 2010, and almost as long as we were looking at it, our QA group's been looking at, prior to Jira, we used Bugzilla, and on top of that, we used Testopia. And that was fine when we had one product, but it didn't really scale very well. So over the past couple of years, for test case management, we did try go-to-group Synapse RT, which is a way to keep test cases in Jira, and that worked fine for small teams. But in order to reuse more testing, we've since deployed Qmetry, which is another vendor that's here. The test people are pretty happy with it. I think they got a little bit of work to do on the sysadmin side. I'm a sysadmin, not a QA person, so the QA people get to decide what they use. And so that takes care of the test case management and the result. We've always used Selenium to automate web testing, and that fits in with Bamboo and Qmetry. But we do have other testing we need to do at the BIOS level and mobile devices and stuff. And so we've increasingly been using Test Plant for that, which is a UK company that has pretty good automation based on VNC.
This helping you? Does that help? So you guys, you see?
There's two other vendors here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two other vendors at the event. One is called Zephyr. So they have a booth, and the other is Catch Limited, and they both have test case solutions as well. Both plugins for the product Jira itself. And all four of those are sound solutions that we've seen work well within the enterprise. So.
Got another question over here.
Actually, I was just going to second the use of Enterprise Tester. We've been using it for about 2 years successfully. Integrates very well. They're very adaptable and very happy with it. So.
Thanks. One more.
So I had a question for him. Since you're using Enterprise Tester, does it allow you to use custom fields from Jira? Okay, great. I also had a question for the panel.
And the answer was yes. So, you guys all hear that? Okay.
Question for the panel is, I'm from Gigamon, and we've been using Jira and Confluence for the past 6 months. And then we have started to make the standardization process, as he talked about. We want to evangelize using Jira for Jira and Confluence for other teams like sales, marketing, HR, etc. Do anybody in the audience or you guys have experience for what you have done in your companies for this?
Claudio.
Because each of these workflows are totally different, and if you can talk about it, it'll be great.
You do, right? You have experience rolling it out in all kinds of different ways and unusual.
Yes, exactly. So at Autodesk, we have done, the use of Jira has been extended not as an issue tracking system. Also, for example, the software as a service team used that as a request for change. So nothing to do with a software issue. It's just how we manage our infrastructure updates, our software deployment, etc. So we have other uses of Jira which are not the traditional that was thought for.
And your question is, how do you encourage them to use this?
Two areas. How do we encourage some of these teams, HR, finance, etc., marketing, to use both Jira and Confluence? Because I think both of these tools are useful for a wide variety of areas along with their plugins. How do we evangelize these tools for these different areas with their different workflows? And I think we can talk both of them separately if you want to.
One of the key things we're always going to want to go back to is a business need or a business value. You need to have a team that is trying to solve a problem. And whether it's, hey, we are doing all of our work in spreadsheets and email and we can't keep track of it and we're dropping our SLAs, or we just want a quicker way to communicate between a couple teams, we want single source of truth, we want visibility, metrics, whatever it is, whatever that business value is, honing in on that, and then being able to wrap Jira or Confluence around that business value. Well, you're looking for very simple work tracking. Well, Jira does that pretty well. Well, you're looking for dashboards and metrics. Well, Jira does that pretty well. Well, we want a knowledge base. Well, Confluence can integrate. So just go back to the source. And this gets back into the forcing, and you can't force them to want it. They will, the organ will be rejected, right? The body will reject the organ. But if they can see, if you can get a light on in their head that, oh, this can solve that problem, and then the tables can turn almost instantaneously, where if you can tell them a story, or if you can get a vision in their head of how their lives would be so much easier if they were just on a single Jira project and they were working through this, especially if you can get an executive, but even just the grassroots, the people in the organization, sales and marketing folks are, I'm going to make a broad generalization. Hopefully there's no sales and marketing folks here. Really resistance to new processes and tools. Like, just give me I got my email and my browser and I don't need anything else. And it's like, well, if you can get into the tool every day, navigating that change. But again, it just goes back to identifying that business need and being able to sink your hooks into that.
But there is actually a role for, and all you guys talked to me about this, for end user training. And LG did something really unusual. You set up a beginner track and an advanced track. So why don't you talk to me? Be specific. Like, how long were these trainings, and how did you figure out what to train?
We have two type of training, and one is advanced, it's called, and the one is basic. Basic for like really basics, like how to create pages, how to written on it, how to edit it, and how to attach page, and how to use a graph and everything. That's a once a month, and that's a one day the training, and half day is for the Confluence, and half day for Jira, how to create the issues, how to link together and everything. And then for the advanced, we have once or twice. And that's the same track, and start with the Confluence and start with after finish with the Jira. But one of the train session, after like a couple of train sessions, I felt like, well, teaching them, forcing them was not working. Ask them to ask questions. So like first of all, first trial, we did it like a 4-hour training, just push them into all the knowledge in their brain. The feedback was horrible. Then after like 3 to 4, the courses has been passed by. We kind of put like 2 hours just force into knowledge and 2-hour Q&A sessions, and they brought with all the questions. They had it in the field, they had it in the team, and they asked like, our team has this kind of problem, what should I do, and blah blah blah. The feedback was great, and then of course we have to study a lot because all kind of question comes out, like unexpected question, and
but like
so,
love life questions, like how can Jira solve my love life? That kind of, no.
Yeah, sort of that. So like all kinds of questions. For example, like like the one times they have to write the requirements, and then they couldn't do how to solve the requirements. So we kind of made up the requirement tree to Confluence. So we kind of create the space and give it to them, so they could solve the problem. But before that, we didn't realize that actually software engineer want to write the requirements. We didn't realize that. The Korea, well, I don't want to say it, but they're really poor requirements out there. They're just developing. They're so busy to develop.
That's not just Korea.
Oh, okay. So the engineers are so poor to write the requirements, but now they realize that an engineer actually can want to write the requirements. So good requirements lead to great test case, lead to good quality software. So we kind of make them lead to more to products, nice and good quality software. So that's one of, so more like forcing into knowledge was not good. Q&A sessions more is like perfect for them. So if you want to make the train sessions, just half and Confluence and Jira, or one day Jira is fine, but put it in Q&A session a lot, because that helps a lot, and I'm learning it and they're learning it at the same time. So.
Okay, so Randall's the training god up here, but I'm going to cut you off here for that. So if you have more specific end user training questions, like what exactly do I need to make sure these people know in order to use this? And those kinds of things, you might want to approach him later, but we have 5 minutes left, I understand? 5 minutes? So has anybody got a burning question, like if you have to go home without this question answered, you're going to cry or something? Okay. We know we're going to cry, so yes.
I'll try not to cry during the question. Thanks, Kevin. So we are looking at migrating from on-demand to hosted, partially so that we can scale more quickly and add in all the plugins and for various reasons. And if you can give me some suggestions on how, especially along 2 lines, like how do we ensure continuity of service for our end users? Because this is something that we're going to be expanding into the whole of marketing at least, and then maybe further into the organization. So during that migration, how do you kind of make that cut over smoothly? And then the other question is, does it make sense for us to start from a clean install and build up from there? Or should we massage the on-demand instance we have in order to fit it into the new, better thing?
We have one more question over there, so
Okay.
be as quick as you can.
Yeah, I'll be as quick as I can here, just to facilitate more questions. So yes, let's start with a clean instance. When we're migrating from on-demand to hosted, or anywhere, or vice versa, we need to practice. So the best way to do it, the best way to make sure that you can do it successfully and you don't interrupt your end users, is practice that. Have a mock migration, document the migration, build a control document that tells your team what steps to do, in what order, what commands to run, validation steps, commands to get validation steps. And a lot of this stuff has been documented. We've documented it online. Atlassian's documented it online. And there are other partners around the globe that have documented it. So you can come see me if you want some specific steps, and I'm happy to help.
And somebody's going to have to work over the weekend, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Someone's going to have to
someone's
work.
Somebody's going to have to work over the weekend.
Yep.
So that might make you cry. So we have, yeah. And I'm,
How many users and/or projects did you have going at one time before you ended up having a full-time Jira, Confluence, configurator, administrator?
well, that would be you, Dave, right?
Yeah, let me go back a couple years. Yeah, again, just to my story, it didn't happen overnight. It was just a gradual thing. We evolved along with the business, and I had to actually we actually stole someone from Atlassian to be our Jira admin, and I was sort of the project manager. And we really didn't know what we were doing with Jira because the business was moving so fast. It's not the answer to your question. I think we got to a place where we had there was operations needed. We had enough users to warrant the work, and just designating me, I had to keep track of my own workload to make sure that
Can you attach a number to that?
Pardon?
Can you attach a number to that? Or a roundabout number? A guesstimate?
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
For us, every enterprise deployment deserves a Jira admin, at least. If it's a deployment stack of the entire tool stack, you might need multiple admins. So we prepare our
what's the
deployment.
number?
500, 800 users,
500,
for one dedicated person. I mean, I have 2,000 users. We've got about 80,000 issues, and I've got actually a couple of my co-Jira admins in the room. So, but it's my full-time job.
And you went the reverse, Claudio. You had a lot and you trimmed down. So how can you talk about numbers and ratios?
Yes. So officially, we have one, let's say, front engineer, which is here in the room, and we have 2 backup people that act in case of emergency. Okay.
To how many users or instances?
3,000 users.
3,000 users.
Yes.
And how many instances?
1 instance of Jira, 1 instance of Confluence.
Does that help your question?
Well, I think part of it's also the velocity of the business, right? How much is your Jira instance being used? When our Jira instance is being used all the time, and the marketing and the sales folks are running at full capacity, and all of our Scrum teams are working at full capacity, there's a lot more work to do. Right now, it's not quite so much because not everything's working, but it really depends on the velocity of the business.
Well, that's it. I think there's a lot of work to do up front, and so when you're allocating these resources, trying to figure out, is that going to continue? So, if you have let's say a user base of 50 or 100 users, or 100 developers, a couple hundred users overall, is that something that it's worth just planning to keep the person full time and they'll stay busy?
I would just, the way I hear it happens is you give it to somebody as a part-time job and say, okay, this is your part-time job, and you give them another job. It's usually some QA analyst or something like that. And then they get to a point where they're like, I can't do this part-time work anymore. You just have to sort of gauge it. I would split it up with someone who's interested in the tools, who wants to learn, give it to them, let them sink their teeth into it, and just ask them to keep track of the work that they have.
Document. And we have time for one more question, final question.
Yeah, very quick question. We're right at the end. So, anybody
right
else
there
have a
by
really
the-
quick one? Right back there.
You'll come up afterwards.
Hi. I'd like to know if you guys have any recommendations on the Jira admins. How many to have, for which size? Our company, we started out with Jira in our development, our IT organization, and now everybody is starting, other departments are wanting to use it as well, but we don't really have the resources to be able to facilitate all the admin for them, setting up projects and managing their work groups and so forth.
I'm going to summarize the answer because we were kind of just discussing that. So it depends on how often they're using it, but around 500 folks. And
500 users.
Start someone part-time and then document the work. So then you'll be ready to justify. I hope that helps you. But I am just determined to let that guy ask his question.
Okay.
Stand up.
So this is Hello? This is the mirror of the question about test case management, which is what suggestions do you have for requirements, which is somewhat of a different process from development work and is also somewhat different from test case management when you're doing development testing?
Yeah, there's
or large sets of requirements.
Yeah, there's several plugin providers that are here on site. So let's group up afterwards, and I'll point you in their direction.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Sorry for cutting this one short.